Hello and happy Friday to all of you joining us back for the second part of the toxic relationship segment. Today's video will be focusing on how to manage toxic relationships. So in the previous video, we worked on the high conflict personality and that type of interchange between you and them and the impact that they have on you and your tie to them. So just a disclaimer that in this video, we will not be diagnosing or offering any therapeutic services or intervention. It's more for psychoeducational purposes. And if you are triggered at any point during this content, please contact your local service provider to assist you. Okay, so jumping right into the content of what you can do when you find yourself in these situations with people that are characterized as toxic, where it's very one-dimensional and it's not a bi-directional relationship. It's very one way, my way or the highway. Also, another disclaimer is that these types of relationships don't have to be romantic only in nature. They can also be with a sibling, a co-worker, a boss, a family member, can be absolutely anybody. Okay, so the first aspect is that you need to understand and accept that you cannot change them. There is no amount of your empathy and unconditional love that will heal the relationship they have with themselves. You cannot build a relationship with someone who is disconnected from themselves, and thereby, as a virtue, you can't connect to them. You need to start to depersonalize the projections that they have on you. Understand that this is not about you. You cannot fix or heal them. That is actually their job. The wound they are carrying, which is that inner persecutor, the inner lower self-worth, came way before you came along. And this reinforces that hurt people hurt other people. You actually need to get out of the way of that war going on inside of them, because they're going to project onto you. Recognize that you abandoned yourself in order to save the relationship or keep this person happy. You need to now focus on rebuilding your own self and rebuilding your own voice and your own needs. We've got to focus on boundaries, which is the respect of yourself and other people. It's the line between the two. And examine all the trail of relationships where this pattern of you being an enabler, an empath, a rescuer reoccurs, and how you tend to take on way too much responsibility or are blamed for others. Where this pattern is so familiar to you, it's normal. You got to look at this from childhood all the way to present. Did you abandon your needs in childhood to attend to the needs of others and fix or heal a parent or caregiver? Were you the rescuer, fixer, the mediator? Did you learn to suppress your needs? And that is why you suppress your needs with this type of toxic person. You need to begin to rebuild your identity around being scapegoated. Start to slowly give responsibility back to this person as they start to project. You can do this by a concept that we call mirroring. So you do this by saying, what I hear you struggle with, or what I'm hearing you say, and this stops your mind internalizing these projections. They will still dismiss this and they will still manipulate and try to deviate away from it. But it's more about you starting to speak up and not taking in their harsh inner critic. It's so important that the mind hears this to realize that you are not them. When they are triggered, don't engage them. Just mirror and set up a boundary. You're going to have to learn how to not play into their victimization, as that is what triggered you to feel for them in stopping to hold them accountable because of their wound. It is so easy for people that are really soft or empathic or kind or gentle-natured to see people in struggle and think, you know what, let's just forgive this one thing because they're in so much struggle. But it doesn't give people license to hurt each other. Display the empathy, but then place the boundary. As an example, I know you are very hurt by XYZ, but it doesn't give you the right to spread the hurt to me. Use empathy and mirroring together with the boundary and the responsibility back. You give it back to them. Recognize the people pleaser within yourself. People pleasers were parent pleasers in childhood. They were conditioned to believe that They had to please the parent and abandon their own needs in order to feel worthy and valued. Recognize this pattern in the current toxic relationship. It was never your job to people please your parent. You should have been told this, but at the time your environment couldn't tell you that. It was your job to just be a kid and learn childlike lessons. You still have that inner kid in you that is supposed to come out and play. Understand that this high conflict individual is wounded, and it is actually their responsibility to take hold of the wound and heal it themselves, just like it is our job. Their anger and hurt and real wounds sometimes will confuse you to trigger your empathy and compassion, to allow behavior to escalate because they are hurt. They can at any point access mental health services with a professional to heal their wound. Millions of people do that every day. They need to do the inner work. They need to take that responsibility. This is an important concept, is to start to detangle from the codependency of those projections of their own inner wounds and the line of how you see yourself, because that becomes so enmeshed. So they project, you interpret that you are bad, and it's all one. You have to slowly detangle. Recognize the confusion and enmeshment. They enter your mind and trigger your own superego, which we call the inner guilt or judge response. But it is in fact their own inner judge or persecutor that they cannot handle, so they actually project it onto you. It's a defense. Begin to separate that inner voice and listen to your own. Detach from that fusion and codependency. You have been trapped in a controlled narrative for such a long time that you actually need to begin to detach and surround yourself with positive energy and people that uplift you. Begin to reframe your worldview away from this toxicity. Rediscover yourself. What brings you joy and light? What brings you towards yourself? Forgive yourself for what is familiar to you. There are powerful dynamic mechanisms in play that trigger your own inner empath, that people pleaser, the enabler, guilt complex. Powerful mechanisms such as trauma bonds, reenactment from childhood wounds, familiarity, and generational trauma. Be prepared for the backlash and manipulation as you start to detach and put boundaries up. Don't engage and just mirror. Continue to rebuild self-identity. Build a life outside of this all-consuming nature of this dynamic. An example of mirroring and giving responsibility is, what am I saying and what you are hearing are two different things. By doing this, you are validating your reality that was dismissed and gaslit for so long. They will continue to dismiss, but it is important that you hear yourself not take on the gaslighting or dismissal. Your mind needs to recognize the distortion of reality that was used to suit their narrative. Over time, your mind will separate your reality and the one that they live in. You need to practice this daily, even to yourself. Get professional help to heal and become self-aware. Get support and speak up. Recognize that you can never please them. Your inner people pleaser will want to receive validation that you are good enough, but that is against a person with a bottomless pit of needs that they cannot and will not take responsibility for. Recognize that toxicity of this and why it drains you. Surrender to that. This is a mourning process of what you thought it could be versus what it is. Challenge that hope to what is actually currently happening, because hope is a future-based concept. It's an abstract, and the present is what's actually happening. Accept people as they are right here, right now. Recognize that this relationship at the moment is parasitic, and guess what? You're the host. Relationships should be symbiotic and give and take, and they should replenish you and invest in you. This one just seems to be taking. Finally, you need to understand that you are not helping, you are actually enabling. Loving someone also entails showing them a mirror and loving them from a distance until they are ready to love you and themselves in a healthy way. Something I wanted to end with is I was listening to a segment of Dave Ramsey's podcast on his show on money management for the US, where he helps people get out of debt and build financial wealth and well-being, to be able to be generous to other people, but to also live with intention and not splurge in a very unemotional and sometimes a too emotional way. And he was speaking to a mother around her wanting to help her son to fulfill a mortgage payment, but the son was abusing it. He was taking advantage, to the extent that Dave said, "Are you helping or are you enabling?" And he referenced the psychologist that he uses on the show, Dr. John, and they have other coaches as well, about even if you are in a super good financial, emotional position, sometimes people, when they see others in distress or in harm, they think it's their job or it's an alleviation of guilt to help them when they're doing well. But we have to ask ourselves, are we helping them when we enable, when we fix, when we rescue? What is the line between helping someone and showing them their truth and trying to help them help themselves? And especially not at your expense. So in that case with Dave, he speaks about if someone needs your help, you match them 1,000 per 1,000. As in, they need to invest in their own helping and you need to help them as well. But they need to show an investment. So it's not just an entitlement thing. I will link that video below together with this. And I hope you all have a lovely weekend. All the best.